Welcome to Sports Cards once again, and this is the second ever live stream on this channel, and we are joined today by Chris from Infinite Investment Game. I've actually done a not a live stream, but a recorded Zoom call with him on his channel before. If you guys wanted to go check that out, we had an interesting conversation about a whole bunch of topics. And before we get started on the topics today, Chris, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell people who you are, what you're about.
Yeah, so I'm Chris from Infinite Investment Game. My channel focuses specifically on alternative investments. Lately, I've been talking more about sports cards and TCG cards, CCG like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic the Gathering, stuff like that. And I talk about, collecting, but also I talk about if you want to invest and flip, more so being smart about it and doing things for the long term and hopefully doing things, for the right and ethical reasons. Um, and I'm also get into graded video games, comic books, and eventually I'm going to make a video on artwork. So I cover all kinds of stuff as far as that.
Cool. And I remember from our last conversation, your background was especially in the TCG stuff. Although you've always been interested in sports, but then sports cards themselves was a bit more recent.
Yeah. Yeah. I got into cards. I originally started learning about cards in 2018. But then I really started buying stuff in 2019, close to uh end of summer 2019. I started buying cards. And then things took off. And partly because Gary V kind of created a roadmap to, and I guess sports card investor too, like a roadmap to actually learning about cards. Because before then, it made it seem like the only thing you could really buy that was either valuable or even collectible was stuff that had to been thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars in a sense.
Okay. Very cool. All right. So today, so Chris sent over a handful of topic ideas, and I really like these ideas. So maybe I can just share the highlights, the different topics that we're planning on discussing, and then we can kind of go into it. And if anybody, I see there's one other person live. If you guys have any thoughts or want to share anything, please do as well. Chris, are you still there? It seems like your picture froze up. I still don't. Okay. So the topics that we're thinking about for this live stream here is we're going to look at redemption cards, the future of redemption cards, how to fix the issues with redemption cards. We're going to look at breaks, the shadiness from breaks, how to protect yourself in breaks. We're going to look at how to thrive in the hobby despite monopolies. We're going to look at the continued decline of the high-end cards, and we're going to look at the rise of more critical content on YouTube and other social media spaces over mania content. So these were some of the topic ideas that Chris had shared, and I thought these were all great topics that we could easily discuss for a long time. So maybe we can just start right in on the one about redemption cards. So when you came up with this thought, Chris, what was it that kind of came to your mind that made you want to discuss the future of redemption cards and how to fix its issues?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things. One, kind of personal experience. Like if you buy packs, buy boxes and things, and you like, let's say you like open up stuff, 9 times out of 10, at some point you're gonna get a redemption. A lot of times when I've done that, it's been expired. Or if I sold boxes or packs, it's been expired. Someone, messaged me back on eBay and it's like, hey, this is expired. I'm like, and this is probably my first time actually when it came to redemptions. And I was like, wait, what? I knew I had a redemption, but like they just expire like that. And I was like, didn't it come out last year? Like,
Yeah. It makes it hard to hold on to any product long term too. If there's any like good quality stuff and it's going to be redemption, and just recently, Panini made an announcement that said that they weren't going to be honoring old expired redemptions. They, they never said that they would absolutely promise to, but they were always kind of making an effort, it seems. But more recently, they're just like, whatever, if it's expired, it's no longer worth anything. So it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, and then I think Sports Card Radio kind of talked about. I guess they're kind of controversial to some content creators, but like about kind of like the start of redemptions, and it seemed like it was kind of like it was almost like a IOU or like some kind of weird, almost like some kind of weird loan in a sense. Um, and something that you would have to like call back later on, but it's almost like I want to I don't want to say get out of jail free card, but it's just like a loophole to kind of play the system in a sense to make people want to get the
Mm,
product, even though you don't really have the product, and you may never get the product. That's kind of like the scary part. And I heard from different content creators only about I guess about 75% of redemptions are actually redeemed, and the other 25% never will be. So it's like
mm,
you have that issue, and I'm glad it's not worse. Like I'll be positive. I'm glad it's not worse. So majority of times, if there's a redemption, you're gonna get that card. But it's one of those things where sometimes for those redemptions, that could be one of the main things that people want to get or collect in a sense.
mm.
Um, and
The highlights of the set.
yeah, and then it's one of those things where I don't know if they actually still make the card, and if people don't, you know, redeem the card at a certain period of time, it just goes to somebody in the organization and they keep it, and then one day they sell it or something, or they just don't make the card in general. I guess there could be variety in that, but I think that's a huge issue, and I think there should be a conversation. Should we even need redemptions anymore? Just because the technology that we even use to make cars is way better than what it was when redemption started. And the truth of the matter is, I don't think you should just the stuff that you need hardcore signatures or certain sets. Um, Maybe just come out with those later, and and have all the other sets come out much earlier in a sense, just to do things to try to avoid this, because I think eventually, even for younger players, especially rookies, they probably want to sign cards because they're going to get a paycheck from it, and
Mm.
whatever extra income they want, they're going to try and go and get that. And especially even before, like with leaf products and stuff like that, like that's their first big money before they get their payouts from the contract. And people want the first ever autos or whatever, from someone. So I think those things probably should be thought of. And I think the other thing with redemptions is it's kind of like a traditional type thing. So so many people used to it, and when a bunch of people get used to it, that's just being the way it is. They don't want to
Mm.
change it. But that
Mm.
doesn't mean that it's always been that way. That doesn't mean it's the better way to have it.
Yeah, that's true. It's tough, because I would think of, like, from a business standpoint, the challenge, it seems to me, is that there's so much that's out of your control. That there's so many players. I think what you said, though, is really a important point, that when the rookies are just coming into the league, or they're kind of they're new to the whole space. They're probably more likely, more eager to be the kinds, in a position where they'll be more eager to sign the autographs, than they might
Hmm.
be, a little bit once they're into the league and they're starting to get real busy and on a steep learning curve and trying to figure everything out and getting used to their teammates and all these other different things. It might be harder then, but if there's kind of
Hmm.
a push, an effort made kind of in advance a little bit, that maybe it would be reduced. But even then, it's tough, because from a business angle, um, you know, there's so many people, and there's gonna always be something that's out of your
Hmm.
control. So it's also really hard to say, like, because if they got rid of redemption cards completely, maybe they could release some of the lower end products earlier, like you suggested, that wouldn't have any massive big hits. But then, even lower end products, that would probably affect the value, the long term value as well, and things like that. So it's tough. I don't think it's an easy problem to solve. It's clearly a problem. Redemption cards are clearly a problem. And personally, I feel like if they were redeemed in a timely manner, like if you could rely on a redemption to get the car to get the card within a few months or something like that, I don't think anybody would have a major issue with it. I think the issue is that there's these redemptions that stretch on infinitely, and that there's no clear solution, or there's no clear approach for how to solve the unendingness of it.
Yeah, I guess one thing, there's another idea. If you get a redemption, you pull a redemption, you could claim a digital card until, and then that gives you access to get the physical card if it's whenever it's available, and there's no like time limit. So I think that's another way that people can probably use things, and maybe use NFTs as, I don't know, say a utility or something like that. I don't know how well Top Shot is doing, but
but I think what you're saying is an interesting idea, because it's something like Top Shot or an NFT that's separate from anything else. I think it has a niche. There's a niche. There's people who are going to be into NFTs who'll be into that. But this gives a connection between the physical thing and the digital thing that could make it have a little bit more space. I think that's a really interesting idea, because if maybe it's even like if you had an NFT redemption, and then if the redemption took over 2 months, like you get some bonus added to your NFT. I don't know what it is, like some physical bonus, like they send out a pack of some cards to you every 2 months if it hasn't been redeemed, or something like that, so that they have some kind of like a, that there's something on their plate that incentivizes them to just go ahead and get this done. Because if they've got 1,000 redemptions out there, and they have to send out 1,000 different products of something else to each of those people who are sitting there waiting, maybe that like kind of just kicks them into gear a little bit more. It just gives them at least some incentive, because right now they don't have a lot of incentive to rush it, other than just the reputation or whatever. But it doesn't seem like Panini and they don't seem to care. I mean, they kind of have monopolies on whatever sports they happen to have the license in, so reputation doesn't really matter that much if you're on a long-term license contract.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah, it's are there I wonder if there's other collectibles where people are buying things and there's like redemptions that exist. Because I know in the TCG world, I don't think that's like a real thing. But you don't really have
Probably
like
not,
people
yeah.
trying to sign stuff. You're not using Pikachu's jersey. Like it's not stuff like that. So
Yeah.
so
It's probably just sports, because even like celebrity kind of stuff, like there's nothing that's like a rookie, like the equivalent of a rookie. If a celebrity doesn't make it into this particular whatever leaf pop culture set or whatever, they just go in the next year's one, and it doesn't make a difference really. With sports, there's a bit more of like a time sensitive thing. There's the rookies, and the rookies need to be in every set that's coming out that year. So it's a little bit more, maybe it's a unique scenario in sports cards specifically.
There is one idea that's coming to mind though. There are some years where they don't really come out with like that key rookie set. There's certain things like the 2012 Panini Prism for basketball. You have the same thing with like 1986. It's very rare, but you have the 1986 Fleer where you have like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years worth of rookies. And then there's certain people who are technically rookies, then they didn't even show up in the set. Like John Stockton didn't show up in 86 Fleer, and he was like, I believe, in the league by then. So it's like he showed up in 88 Fleer. So it's one of those things where and then like there are certain guys in the 2012 Prism basketball that were drafted in 2011. They had other cards that came out, but for the main sets. I guess if it's really bad, it can come out with all the other fringe sets, and then I don't know, the mid tier and higher end stuff. I guess they could consolidate it. It'll piss people off because they got to wait a year. But you know, combining two draft classes, especially if they're both good, long term, people may like it because it seems like a lot of people still like 2012 Prism, even though most of the players aren't. I mean, there's Damian Lillard, right? I think he's a collectible kind of guy.
My guy.
I don't know about Anthony Davis. We'll see. We'll see this
maybe not
year.
anymore.
But you know, like, and maybe Kawhi, like there's some people who are like collectible you get interested in. 86 Fleer, you have that. I'm pretty sure there are other sets that aren't coming to mind. I guess for soccer, like 2014 Prism World Cup or whatever. But that stuff, I'm not gonna go to soccer right.
It seems though that a lot of those, like the 86 Fleer, the 2012 Prism basketball, like there's extenuating circumstances that like require them to do that. And that there's kind of no way to avoid it. You know, I mean, 86 Fleer, there was just, it was star cards for so long and there was nobody who was doing anything. There wasn't much demand either. So, and then 2012, I think, there's also extenuating circumstances. So, I do see some logic, but I think before that, I think a better first step would be to like reduce just some of the amount of product in general. I mean, there's a lot of sets out there that are really aren't that interesting. I mean, and sometimes they're releasing new stuff. Like Flux came out last year, Recon, so these are really like, they were in Chronicles before. Just put them back into Chronicles. Some of this kind of stuff, like if Chronicles just has a mixed bag of a bunch of stuff, and then you have like a smaller handful of reliable, consistent stuff, and then you can experiment with one new set a year or something like that. But I feel like they expand too much, and in every single product, there's quite a large need for autograph cards. Autographs have been so big, and so it ends up making the supply of autographs in general so massive that I think it makes it, like, from a logistical standpoint, it'd be so hard to follow up on that many autographs from that many players in that many sets. And then you have some on card and some that are stickers. And because, the stickers, of course, are also part of the whole logistical thing. They have to do the stickers because they've put themselves into this position where they just have to do so many autographs. But I kind of feel like it's at the point where there's so many autographs, it's starting to lose its specialness. Like autograph cards are meant to be, like, if you pull an autograph card, it's supposed to really be something special. But if it becomes too common and too long of a checklist of players, it starts to, I don't know, I feel like there starts to be a loss of interest, or a loss of demand even on autographs as a category of card. It's amazing when you can go on to some place, and find some certain autographs of some nobody players, and you can buy for like $2 or something like that. Like, there's no reason for that. It's challenging. It's logistically challenging, and it's not really of much benefit to the sports card world in any ways I can really see with that many. If autographs are a little bit more special, I don't know. I feel like it would be better that way and easier to manage.
Yeah, I know we probably talked about this last time, and I know I talked about this months ago and even probably a year ago, about kind of like, the mass produced scarcity thing. And, obviously it was base, and then so they're going to produce, a bunch of base cards, but, like companies know, okay, we can't produce too much base. So we're going to do a bunch of silvers and a bunch of non-colored parallels. So you start with that. And then they realize, okay, since demand is so, especially if you're still kind of like printing cards to meet the demand of 2020, 2021, when you're like in this massive mania phase, it's one of those things where, all right, we need to meet demand because everything's selling out. So they're going to print to hopefully their guess would be right at that point where they're just at that threshold of selling out in a sense, where it still creates that perception that these things are just like the rarest things and I still have to get them. Obviously they always like overshoot and there's a bunch of stuff stuck on the shelves, but I think that's the goal. And then, then they graduate to serial number cards, and then they graduate to, um, trying to put legends in sets that are serial numbered and all this other stuff that aren't really part of the main, main roster of players. And then what they try to do is add in patches of jerseys and autographs, so to stretch things out, because you can do only so many on-card autos. You do the sticker autos, and you can only do so many game-worn jerseys. And there's still a memorabilia market where people just collect jerseys and have them signed in a case or plaque or whatever. So there's only so many they're going to cut up, and there's only so many basketball is 82 games, so I guess you can and
you get quite a few, yeah, if you make the effort to.
Yeah, so you just have this where they're going to do player worn jerseys, and now it's not even player worn. I actually predicted this, which is interesting, that they're just going to get a random jersey.
Yeah, just from your local Walmart or from your dirty laundry basket.
and yeah, and it's probably been worn, but not by the player. And then so it's one of those things where they're gonna try to stretch that as much as possible. And I guess they want to kind of make it where it feels like everybody gets a hit. But
which there is something to be said about that too, because if you're opening packs and every single thick card you have is a base card, like you're not going to want to open another pack also. So there's a balance. There's a real balance there that I don't really know how to walk that balance line right. Like, how do you balance between making sure people feel like when they're opening the product there's something to chase and there's something special, but not flooding the color parallels, flooding the market with these patches that have nothing to do with anything, that are just pieces of garbage essentially. Like, how do you balance that? I don't think it's an easy question. I think it's easy to complain about it, and I do a lot, and I don't like the way that they rely on certain crutches. The color parallel is kind of a crutch. There's certain things that annoy me, but at the same time I don't know what the solution is, because from a business standpoint, it's really tough to find that balance. Maybe there's just a variety of other things, better inserts, more inserts. I love the 90s inserts. Maybe bring back some more kind of like cool looking 90s styles sort of inserts, or a variety of things, so that there is some big hits, but there's also some like cool lower end chases. I don't know, maybe something like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's really hard. Most companies, I've seen this with Pokemon too. The companies are trying to make money, and they're trying to print to meet demand. And the truth of the matter is, the secondary market isn't where these companies make money. Where they make money is the primary market. So and I think not all the time, but most of the time, because I think there's certain things like sports cars is just strong enough to say long term. Like long term sports cars is strong enough for it's going to exist 20 years from now, 30, 50 years from now. So it's not much they can do to, like, if they're like putting forth effort, it's really hard to just like have no collectors and no long-term investors, because you still have vintage. You still have some great stuff that's coming out. I do like the kabooms. I do think it's gotten kind of a little crazy, because now you have like 101s and now 505s and stuff like that, which if you're a newer person, is going to take you longer to kind of learn. I think you have to figure out how to meet the needs of the older, more experienced people, whether in the hobby or just older people, because they may like, let's say, the 90s inserts, but like newer people may like Kaboom and Color Blast. And I think it's probably you probably want to make products where you have different kinds of sets of collectors and long-term investors. where some people like rookie cards and make the rookie cards look nice, but also unique enough where people want to collect them. And it's almost like a scavenger hunt in a sense, where um, and they just have to find that balance of not too much, that Goldilocks area where it's not like insurmountable, but it is a bit of a challenge, and it's not like you're just gonna get them all very easily. And then you have people promote and have people who want rookie cards, people who want I get I guess that's the big thing. And then if you want to do serial numbered, I guess it's like low serial number, like goals or whatever, of other years that aren't rookie, and just autos, just memorabilia, and try to make it dynamic. I think the issue is just the companies kind of just want to print to meet demand. And when you have an issue like we said before, in a 2019, 2020, 2021, you have this mania phase. That is kind of an anomaly, and it's like not that many people are going to be coming in. That's not a normal thing. So now you're like severely overprinting things, and then you're kind of almost just repeating the 90s, like the early 90s again when it comes to cards. It's just it's not exactly the same, because now you have other ways to kind of manipulate the product.
It's kind of similar though. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it's like the same but hidden behind the way that it's now done, behind the color parallels and stuff. It's almost the same thing. Let's respond to a few. We got David Mills is saying a few things in the comment box that I think are really good to mention. He says here, man, some color parallels don't make any sense. The cards just look ugly. And I think I absolutely 100% agree with this. And sometimes I feel like it also is going to affect the I don't know, like the mindset, the collector's desire to continue to chase down certain sets and certain products. If there's only a few cards that you actually really like, because the art of a card, the look of a card is important to a collector. When I'm looking at my favorite players, like a good serial number or whatever, like a nice auto, like those are all nice. But if I look at a card and it doesn't like appeal to me visually, I'm probably not going to want to keep it. Like I want something I can like display. So I feel like there's that some of those color parallels are just so ugly.
That's true. There's certain ones. That's very true. There's some color parallels. And it's just so many. It's like all these stripes, these tiger stripes that look weird.
So weird. So many of them. There's only a handful that actually, like for me at least, like actually really look visually appealing. There's a few. Every once in a while I'll see one and I'm just like, whoa, that looks cool. I saw like I don't know, maybe this isn't everybody's, but the Black Velocity, the optic Black Velocity, I just happened to see one for sale on a auction earlier this evening, and I had never really paid much attention to it before. And I was like, that's cool. I mean, I could see, I'm probably not going to go chasing it myself, but I could see why somebody would like that one and would choose to, try to make a small set of their favorite players in that or something like that. But there's so few that are like that. And most of them they end up looking like just similar to all the other ones,
True.
That's crazy.
Just a different shade of color.
And then he went on to say, Chris, that's right. Cheap sets for kids, medium and high end for bigger fish, and make them look good. All of them. I think that's a good approach. I think they try that a little bit, like with Chronicles. Chronicles is lower end, seems, and it has a lot of the rookies, tons of rookies. So if you're just interested in the newer rookies in the league, you can buy some for not very expensive, get some Chronicles, and you get a bunch of rookie cards of your favorite rookies. And some of them look really cool. Some of the Honors cards or Phoenix cards, like there's a handful of different sets in Chronicles that I think look fantastic. So I kind of like that product in that sense.
The one thing when it comes to like the mid tier and the high end, I don't really know what's the high end anymore. Just because it's like it used to be what National Treasures, Flawless, and Immaculate. But that's kind of changed recently. And then there's certain
Especially with
mid-tier.
national treasures, every patch, they're not game used or game worn anymore. I would think that
Oh,
for a product like national treasures, at least for those high end products, the patches should be game used. At least in those sets, they're not.
that's crazy. That's really crazy.
Crazy.
So yeah, it's one of those things, and you're paying so much money for national treasures. Where I hope people aren't paying $6,000 for a box of national treasures anymore. But you're paying
I
probably at
don't know,
least four
maybe.
figures for national treasures, and you're not getting that many cards. So it's like,
Yeah.
it can be
I know,
anybody.
and on the secondhand market, I've bought in a handful of Mobley and Scotty Barnes patch cards out of National Treasures and Noir um, over the past month or so, and the prices I'm getting on them are sometimes. I mean, of course, my context is different, but the prices I'm getting on them don't seem like National Treasures. I mean, like an Evan Mobley, double patch auto out of 99, which of course is not game used. I'm getting for like 20-25 bucks. It just doesn't seem right
Interesting.
for a guy like that coming out of National Treasures.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where yeah, there's other stuff, right? You mentioned Noir. I was like, I forgot about Noir. I actually liked a lot of their autographs and some of the designs for Noir.
I
I
like the
remember
look. Yeah, I've always liked the look.
they had Opulence. I remember I had some Opulence cards, but they discontinued that. And then there's some other sets. Then there's like mid tier stuff where you have the Panini Prism, Optic. You have Select, which people are acting like is basically turning low end, and then you have like Contenders, Contenders Autos, uh, and you got other kind of prisms where you have like the cracked ice kind of prisms, or the disco prisms. Like you just have all this stuff, and then there's probably some other ones that aren't coming to mind. I'm just like saying the main hits, but like there's so many other stuff where Impeccable, and that was kind of around before the big sports cards thing. But
Mm,
people didn't go after that stuff like that. People just went
mm.
after maybe Prism and then Optic, and then everything else kind of went up barely or went down barely. Oh,
So what
Eminence.
what
Oh,
would
I
you
remember
say?
Eminence.
So based on that, what would you even call, like, what are the high end products? I mean, David asked this question as well here, directed at you. If NT isn't necessarily a high end product anymore, despite the fact that it's extremely expensive, what would you consider some of the true high end product nowadays?
Eminence is supposed to be a high end product. See, the thing with the high end products, the cards are generally much thicker. And just because like the design of the card is more robust, most of the time, I personally like immaculate, especially for basketball, better than anything personally. There's certain flawless stuff that's nice, but it's supposed to look very nice. The sticker cards, you normally have the auto or memorabilia in it, and it should typically be game worn, and it should typically be on card. And you have other stuff like Eminence. Like I remember for soccer, because I had a Christian Pulisic Eminence out of 1 out of 5 card with like Clint Dempsey and Alex Morgan and another one, like the top U.S. male and female players from the past and present. Um, and that didn't catch as much money. One, because I guess it's hard to grade, but something like that that's like limited, like a limited run, and have those features of on card autograph, patches of game worn jerseys, and they don't make a lot of. And you buy a box, you buy a hobby box, and you get a smaller set of cards in a sense, because that kind of improves the rarity. And I don't think you need to, for both um collecting or investing, you don't necessarily have to do the high end. Like you obviously you can do mid tier stuff, but I guess it's kind of like there could be high end stuff that sells for cheap just because people don't understand or don't want to do the work. Um, because yeah, I mean, I guess it would still be Natural Treasures, Flawless, and Immaculate, and then Eminence if they, but I believe they stopped making it. And then there's some stuff is just going to get lost. Like 10 years from now, people won't know what opulence is.
Yeah. Yeah. And some stuff I think is kind of like they're shooting themselves in the foot a little bit. Like we were saying with National Treasures, like National Treasures has this reputation, but then I feel like, this year, without game use patches, like I just feel like they're cheapening it a little bit, which, we've seen in the past, like somebody else mentioned in here, Hobby Champs here mentioned about how Select used to be like this really premium set, and when you look at some of the cards from earlier years of Select, like there's a beauty about them. Like just the design is really nice. The feel of the card is really premium. Everything about it is really nice. And then you get up to the more recent stuff, and the extreme amount of color parallels they have, and with them having the different levels, like the concourse, the premier, all of those, and then each of those levels having their own color parallels. It's just like it's gone off the deep end, and it's no longer has that feel or that connection that it had in the earlier years. I worry that the same thing might be happening to National Treasures like right now. Like, give it another couple of years, and are you going to be able to buy like a National Treasures blaster box at your local Walmart or something? Like it totally seems possible.
Yeah, I think, and also what they're trying to cover up with this is, and this probably goes into like how do you like find a way to thrive despite these monopolies? Because it's not like Fanatics is taking over Tops, and they're probably going to take over Panini soon. So it's like, yeah, they have incentive to sell cards, but they're probably going to do things that's going to hurt the secondary market. And they're probably going to kind of try to cover their butts with a lot of chase cards. And then you have this one crazy chase card or a couple of crazy chase cards where, you got the triple logo man or something that sells for $100K, $1 million or something. But like most people know, like it's probably a waste of time even to try to chase that. Like you don't really have a real chance.
Yeah, and I don't like it when products are organized in that way, because then I feel like it's specifically trying to nurture a gambler's mentality, which I don't think is a healthy mindset when you're coming to cards. Like when I want to have chase cards, but I also want to be able to open a pack and feel confident that I'm gonna get something I like. There's gonna be some good stuff in there. Even if I don't make my money back, at least I know I'm gonna have some stuff in there. What sometimes I feel like with too much of just like a logo man chase card or something like that, like I don't know, like it's like scratch off lottery ticket kind of approach to the hobby, which isn't my it's not what I'm interested in.
I'm not a fan either. I would say there's a lot of people in the hobby, especially if they're on like more on the investment side. They probably have some kind of gambling background. And I think a lot of these companies know this and they want to leverage that because they're willing to spend big money on stuff. That's part of the reason why you see a Trey Lance card sells for hundreds of thousands of dollars, despite the fact he's done nothing. Like he's literally done nothing. I think he started one game or something. I think he lost or 2 games. He lost those games. So it's one of those things. I don't even remember if Justin Herbert's gone to the playoffs yet. I don't really remember, or even won a playoff game, and he has cards that are selling for $1 million. I don't know how many Peyton Manning cards are sold for $1 million, but he has 2 Super Bowls and like 5 MVPs, and many people consider him top.
And his cards
3.
are printed less as well, so it's a little bit illogical.
Yeah,
it's just
and I understand. Like Justin Herbert, for example, is his cards are nicer, and people may want to spend a little bit more, but it's one of those things where yeah, I think a lot of people who are gamblers, for whatever reason, instead of, and I do think investing can be good and it be a positive thing, but people who are like, investing big money, but they don't want to invest, I don't know, stock market or real estate or just any kind of traditional anything, 401k, IRA, whatever. And then they just do everything in sports cars and collectibles. Just because I don't know. It's just one of those things where they're gamblers and they're like, oh, I don't want to get regular returns or 10% every year or something like that on average. I want to go to the big thing. I want to go 0 to 100. I want to go from, I guess, I mentioned the 1987 Michael Jordan Fleer PSA 10. I want to go from $1,000 to 82,000 or 60,000 or something like that.
Yeah. I guess it has been a kind of mindset that's been nurtured in the hobby over the past few years. Maybe it wasn't always there. I think
Yeah.
in the past, people have always, the value of cards has always been part of the hobby, from the time of Beckett grading company. But it's always been like this gradual, like you're kind of watching, you're paying attention to the games, you're seeing who's doing well, you're seeing how it's moving cards a little up, a little down here and there. I think in the last few years, there's a totally different kind of mindset that's been nurtured, and now and the way that the products have been released have been a reflection of that kind of mindset, I feel. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's necessarily the mindset that's going to stick around in the hobby long term. So I feel like
It won't.
I'm curious what's Fanatics' approach is going to be in the future, if they're going to make some changes, and if I don't see much evidence that they're going to make the changes I'm hoping for, but who knows.
Well, what I would be hoping for, it'd be interesting if they brought back. See, there is enough people for like. Well, I guess it's kind of like. It'd be interesting they brought back Topps Chrome for basketball. That'd be very interesting, and it'd probably be very exciting. And they had a few premier or main mid-tier sets, and then yeah, I guess I am trying to get interested because I don't think people are really gonna have much leverage over Fanatics, and they'll probably consult certain people and certain content creators of what to do. But I think in the end of the day, I think people are gonna have to figure out how to thrive despite these monopolies. And I think generally speaking, monopolies, because I think this happened in the 90s too, really aren't that great for the hobby. Because now you don't have competition, and then one of the issues with monopolies, they could just like put out on anything because there's demand, and it doesn't have to be that great of quality and things such as that.
So I wonder why it's that way now. I remember when I was a kid collecting cards, there was a lot of different brands that had the licenses for the different sports. You could get the Upper Deck, you could get the Sky. I mean, I think over time when the hobby did crash, I think I think what happened is they kind of had to consolidate, and they kind of all came under like one umbrella sort of thing. But I remember, thinking when I was a kid, there were certain like low end cards like Stadium Club that had like really cool photos. Like they were super cheap, $2 a pack, but the photos were really nice. And there were certain cards, some of the inserts just looked phenomenal. And I loved collecting those cards. And then you had, different brands, and they all kind of competed against each other. And I feel like it was a healthier kind of environment when you have a variety of people competing with each other.
Yeah, it is healthier. I think one of the things that people are gonna have to do, if they come out with like crappy products, or it's like I think for most people, when they come out with something new, even if they come out with first off the line stuff, you may be better off just waiting. Waiting, people are gonna make content on it, review it, and you're gonna kind of get a feel of if there's something actually worth it or not. And then try to go watch the people who review this stuff who are more in the middle. Instead of the people who are like always pumping and stuff like that, because obviously unless if you want to do that, watch people who are always pumping, and then go watch a channel that's like always critical, just because like so you can kind of get an idea of like what's actually going on. Just because we've seen it before, when products first come out, they're extremely expensive, and then they basically tank in price, and they actually become more affordable for people. And then, I think there's other things like knowing when the releases are, seeing what the card designs look like, looking at the checklist. I think it's going to have to be more of a proactive thing for collectors and certain investors as well. Just because it's like it's one of those things where you have to, I feel like you have to kind of look at it as like Fanatics is trying to make money off of you. And you know, if you have a great experience, fantastic, but that's like the second thing. The first thing is they're getting money
especially
from
in a monopoly setting, you know, that's especially the second thing.
So it's one of those things where I think people are gonna have to be smarter, do their own research, go off the cards that they actually like, or look nice to them and have like a nice aesthetic. If you're trying to invest in stuff, I think it's just willing to wait, just because like the demand is gonna change. Like the thing that's hot right now won't be in the future.
Yeah. Let's look through a few of these comments. We've got a few comments. Some of them I'll go through quickly, but there's a few in here that I wanted to look at closer. So that some people were sharing some about their thoughts, Nor being a nice set, Origins being underappreciated, which I absolutely agree with. Origins is, as far as like visual appeal, I really love Origins. I think it's really cool. This comment was kind of funny here. This one says, if the feds print some more dollars, we might be happy that we have all those 1 ounce silver bars in the cards. That'll be the most valuable part of the card. It actually has some intrinsic value, like that one.
For the 1 ounce silver bars, like are those actual 1 ounce silver bars? Because
you can't. Yeah, I forgot what product it is. It's in, but yeah, there's actual silver. There's actual silver inside certain cards. I can't remember. Maybe you can mention. Was that David? Yeah, if you remember what that set was, I can't recall offhand. But yeah, there's some sets that have the silver bars embedded inside.
I think I've seen Eminence have that, but I was like, I've seen gold too, and it's like 1 ounce gold, and I'm like, the card is selling for $500, and a 1 ounce of gold is $2,000, and I'm like, this seems like a trick. Like,
that's funny. You know, that's the like with the little ones that have the gems embedded in them, like you know the ruby diamonds or rubies or whatever. I think Flawless does that sometimes. You know, most of those are all like made in, they're not natural diamonds. They're made in a lab, you know, where they can make them, and they're officially diamonds. I mean, they have the same DNA, the same like makeup of an actual diamond, but they're made inside of a lab to be able to put into these cards. So it lowers the cost for sure. SP123 says Impeccable has the silver bars. Yeah, that's right. Impeccable has silver bars in them. It's a really cool looking card too.
Interesting. I think I have remember seeing them. The Impeccable cards I've gone after are like more RPA type of Impeccable, or just on card autographs. But yeah, that's interesting.
Here's another hobby champ said, you know, when he mentioned this comment back when we were talking about kind of the nature of the last couple of years, but this is an interesting one when he said a lot of poker players have entered the hobby over the past couple of years, but it's kind of like the cyclical thing, you know. So some people, when there's a hype, when there's something going on in the market, like you get a bunch of people who are in there for a specific motivation, and then kind of cycles out. They kind of lose their interest when they can't, you know, be doing something, you know, big money. And I think that's natural. I think that's probably happened at times in the hobby. So it's good to just understand the cyclical nature of the hobby.
Yeah, the nature is very cyclical. Yeah, like you know, I'm like doing research in a decision making lab
Right, yeah.
for neuroscience. Like I'm coming up with like some projects. And one of the things I checked, you know, there's like the psychology cycle of investing or whatever. And I think you have like the smart money, and then eventually like the dumb money comes in, and you have like the media hype, and then you have this massive bubble. I'm pretty sure sports cards, and I made a video about it, but like the sports cards have gone through a similar cycle. You can look at 1929 stocks, Bitcoin, like all the bubbles that are like happened. And I do think what's been happening of like, I guess we were going to talk about this last, but like, I guess we can go into it now. Like kind of like the decline of like a lot of high end stuff that's continuing to go down. The reason why people were successfully able to predict that is because you kind of look at, you don't know when it's going to happen, but you can kind of see the pattern in a sense. And yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of still surprised in a sense. Where if you just looked at it and you kind of applied it, you will see it's like, yeah, things would come down to this point, and it's probably going to come down even more, because I don't know exactly what period, but I think most of the stuff, except I don't know 1 to 3% of the cards, are probably going to go back to what 2019 prices were, and
Yeah.
then you have a small bunch that are actually above that.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, it makes sense, for it to reach a position closer to what it was. If you take out if you look at graphs and charts and you just take out that crazy spike period, it's just looks like it's just been a continuation of what it's always kind of like. There's
Yeah.
always certain periods of time where there's certain players who go up and certain players who go down, but generally there's like this, not exactly, you can't like expect, there's no specific expectation, you can't know what's going to happen, but from an overarching sense, there's just a general gradual stuff. So it does seem to be going back to that, which for me, I prefer it that way. I don't like them. I don't like a sports card market that is so wild. I'd like to kind of like know what's going on, to for there to be at least some logic behind what's happening, like for me to understand it, from that angle. I know that there's, how Ziggy always says, it's sports cards is Ferengi, not what's Spock again? Oh man, the that's my Star Trek vocabulary is gone. But it's very emotional. It's not logical so much, and it is, But at the same time, I feel like, if we're getting back to something that's a little bit more, a little bit less manic, it's better. I feel it's a more enjoyable engagement with the hobby when you kind of can at least get some sense of what might possibly happen. At least some degree.
I think the probably the better period would probably be like 2019, and probably most of 2019. Even the end of 2019, things were kind of getting a little crazy, but it was still like controlled. I mean, I guess Luca was kind of going crazy, but Luca kind of makes sense to me.
Mm,
You know, you can argue Trey Young, but like, someone like Luca kind of makes sense. Um, and then maybe January 2020, right before this dual LeBron Michael Jordan card sold for like $900,000, and Gary Vee was like, "I told you to buy sports cards," because that's when things first went crazy. And then you had the lockdown, which a lot of stuff crashed unless you were selling on PWCC or Probstein. Um, Stuff wasn't selling for what it was before, and then it started going up again. So I think probably before the pandemic, and probably before that crazy sale, it is a good sweet spot if you want a really active market. Um, but it's still a bit crazy to me. I just think a lot of people aren't doing as much on sports cards, and they kind of moved on to others like Marvel PMGs. Like I just I think most people kind of knew that was going to be like a train wreck.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it seems inevitable. I mean, because it seems like with something like Marvel, it seems like Marvel has always been just it's been a collector's. The value in that space has never been the key part of that part of the hobby. It's always
True.
been about the collecting aspect of it. And sports cards also, but sports cards have been interspersed with the kind of prospecting a lot, and interspersed with different elements of gambling at time, or different elements of different kinds of mindsets. So sports cards have been a little bit all over the place through the years, but Marvel has always been just kind of a collector's space of people who are interested in that universe. And I think it only makes sense that that's where it will remain. It's not a space. You can't prospect on a Marvel character. It's weird to think of it that way. It's like
Yeah.
they're fictional characters. Are you prospecting on some businessman who's deciding whether to release a movie in 2 years? Like it feels like a weird space to be able to be thinking about like prospecting and stuff like that. And even PMGs, the whole hype of PMGs in the Marvel world was a bleed over from the hype of PMGs in sports cards. And it wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily like, it's not a Marvel thing. Like it seems like the people who are interested in Marvel PMGs tend to be sports card people that kind of like went over there for a period of time,
Yeah.
but it's not really like rooted in the Marvel universe so much.
Yeah, I think stuff like it's like comic books, Marvel, DC stuff. I think it's more of a comic book thing, and I really want to say it's a generational thing for that stuff. Like, yeah, it's been popularized because of movies, which is great, and you still probably have some new collectors and people want to come in, but stuff with like Marvel, I think more baby boomers and Gen X, like later Gen X people, are the people that are kind of propping that market up. And those groups of people are probably in the time period of life where they're making the most money they've ever made. So you have
Mm.
that more disposable income. I think when you have
Mm.
newer generations, millennials, Gen Z, it'd be less attractive. They kind of like it because of the movies, but they may just stay with the movies. Some people go into cars, some people go into comic books, but from what I see, there'll be a small percentage of things. I don't know, like the that'll be worth money, but for most of that stuff, it's just generation. And I think people need to think about this when they're buying a lot of high end cards, just because at one point I need to meet some of these people who are like spending all this money like on a Trey Lance or I or even Lonzo Ball like you're spending a bunch of money on like Alonzo Ball car and he may be a Hall of Famer, but like there's a bunch of Hall of Famers people don't care about. So it's like one of those things where or
You mean
even
Lonzo Ball or LaMelo Ball?
both technically, because at one point
Both,
people were
yeah.
going crazy for Lonzo Ball, and people were like, "Yeah, I spent like tens of thousands of dollars on Lonzo Ball cards." Like,
Yeah, it's a little hard to see. Like Hobby Champ says here, sometimes logic is a word that doesn't exist in the hobby. It's hard for me to see how that's the right decision. If you're collecting, if you have a personal collection with about a player and you just really love a card, okay, whatever. But yeah, if you're approaching it to try to invest in something like, yeah, to the risk of something like Trey Lance, where the potential for the floor is still so low and the potential for the ceiling is really very minimal. It's hard to envision what's the mindset, like why why are you doing that?
yeah, I mean, if you really want to protect yourself, don't even buy those guys and wait 3 or 4 years. Like literally, it'll probably hurt because you may really like the player. And he's like, I want his card. Maybe buy some of his low end stuff. Stay away from mid tier and high end, and just wait like 4 or 5, maybe 6 years, and then buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Like Giannis is starting to look attractive to buy in a sense. I know like everything's going down. Like I bought, I guess this card is rare. It could be fake, but it's like a PSA 9 cracked ice Giannis Antetokounmpo card I bought about a month ago, which I really liked. I just haven't seen any like rookie cracked ice Giannis cards, but I thought it was cool. So, but a lot less people are trying to buy. I mean, stuff is still expensive, but also like he has a championship, 2 MVPs, defensive player of the year, and he's probably the best guy in the league. So it's like
Yeah.
you can understand why stuff, and it's not that many cars compared to like guys now, but
Yeah.
like,
And he's also the kind of player, like if you look at the players in the league today, you can see a handful of NBA players that are probably still going to be relevant long term, not just a small handful. It seems like of the younger people, like the most likely to be in that kind of. Of course, LeBron is going to, Curry is going to. Of course, that, but with younger people, Giannis seems like he's the most likely to be relevant.
yeah, it's funny because I heard an interview and he was like he wants to go out like Tim Duncan, and I'm like that may scare a lot of sports card investors.
That's funny. Hey, another topic we were going to talk about, and back here, David also mentioned was, I think it was David, about breaking and how to, or Hobby Champs mentioned it. Here we go. He said, group breakers are raising the cost of boxes case, but also it's pretty sweet to be able to get every card of a player out of a case. LOL, kind of a catch-22. So one of the topics we did want to talk about too is like related to breaks, like how, how do you protect yourself? How do you make good decisions in the breaking space? For me, I feel like I don't break. I've broken like maybe twice ever. It's not my thing. I'm not totally opposed to it, but with the conditions of things right now, I don't like it, but I do see a context where it could be good. So what is your thoughts about how you can kind of, approach the world of breaking in a wise way?
Yeah, so breaking promotes kind of like almost like a gambling mentality, and but also like it can be entertaining. It could be really nice for kids. Um, I think there are a couple of things that people need to look at, right? Don't look at it as an investment at all.
Absolutely.
And I know everybody says that, but there's some people out there who still do. If you're gonna
Yeah.
look at breaking, you need to think of it more of like going to a casino or playing the slot machines or something like that. That's what you're doing.
The way I think about it is like no different than if I was to spend money to like go on a small vacation or to go out to dinner with something. Like I just think
Mhm.
of it as like paying for entertainment, you know, and I don't expect any return.
Yeah. I think it's like, like you're going to a movie, like you're going to like, I don't know, depending on what kind of boxes you're buying into versus, if you're buying in the Chronicles versus on National Treasures, um, one might be, a low end movie theater and maybe a drink and some candy. And the other one may be like a high end movie theater
Yeah. You're
with
like renting
like,
out the entire movie theater for the week.
yeah, with like gourmet dinners and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
so I think that's probably the better way to look at it. And then when it comes to individual breakers, I think you need to look at reputations. And I think there's probably some places on the internet or on YouTube where you can um, Google the top breakers, and then you could watch the breaks, look and see. I think you have to do some research and see if there's any controversy with them. Those people, have they done
Yeah.
anything that's been shady? Because if they have, people can learn from their mistakes and they could be new and stuff. But a lot of times, that they could do it again, or they've been doing it all along. Because there have been times where a breaker, or they's like, oh yeah, we're gonna give this card away for free or whatever, and they break the card, they break the box, and it's like a valuable card. It's like a $50,000 card, and they're like, oh, yeah, we'll get you another card, and
Yeah,
it's
that's the
like,
backyard break situation. Yeah.
yeah,
That's the thing about
go ahead.
like it's almost like there's a like within breaking. I feel like there's like a like because it's become a form of entertainment. People are not necessarily looking for breakers sometimes that are the best collaborators or the people that you trust the most. They're looking for a TV show they can interact with a little bit, which is I think
Yeah.
why something like the Backyard Breakers, why they get so many people coming there, because they're coming there like they would come and watch a show on a show on on TV or something like that. It's from that kind of mindset. But yeah, I feel like when I'm coming at, if I was breaking more often, my approach would absolutely be, okay, let me find somebody that I feel like if he owned my local card shop, like I would want to go there, and I would want to talk to him
Mhm.
about cards, and I would want to like build an actual connection, build an actual friendship with this person. And if I can feel that sense of community, then and there's a sense of trust, then I'm more likely to be willing to go into that kind of break. I feel like that's the kind of mindset that I would want to go into, and that's one of the reasons I haven't done much breaking either, because I don't know I don't know who the breakers are. I don't have any connection with any of them specifically.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think there's other things where You mentioned like backyard breaks. The reason why a lot of people probably break with them is because also you're going to see a lot of big hits just because they have, I guess, more money and they're buying
So
way more
much stuff.
products.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're just going to increase the chances of seeing big hits and stuff like that. I think a lot of people probably watch it just because they just want to see somebody pull like a crazy card and then people go all crazy and jump around. It's entertaining or whatever. It's just like wow. Um, but I think it's one of those things where yeah, the big thing I think kind of we're saying is like, you want to do some research and you want to find someone you have a connection with. And if you go to card shows and things such as that, maybe some of the breakers are there. And this may be good for breakers too, to like maybe go to card shows, do things so they can interact with
Mm.
the people they're breaking with and do some things, because a lot of these breakers are making so much money. It's probably going to be a little bit less now. Um, but like because there's less easy money and less free money on the table, but
Mm.
either do some giveaways or do live streams, question and answers, people who've broken with them and things like that can ask some questions, maybe get to know them a little bit more, what kind of cars they're into, maybe if they collect stuff like that. I think
Yeah.
certain things that breakers can do can be like helpful, or if they host a card show or an event, and you get to see them or meet them in person, that would be interesting.
Mm. So what do you think about like in the future of breaking? So David asked this question, I think is really good because it seems like, Fanatics seems like the kind of company that they're trying to create an ecosystem where they are the center of everything. I mean, really, who knows what Fanatics' long-term vision is going to be, but they're trying to conquer all. What do you think, what do you see as the possibility of the future of breaking if Fanatics starts to step into that market?
Um, Probably the most popular breakers and the people who have a pretty big platform and probably the most ethical breakers who had the least amount of controversy are going to be the people that they're going to like outsource or get them like contracts to break for them, and they're probably going to send products to them at more of a discount. um and they may like limit the amount of product they send to card shops and other places. So the whole good old boy network people talk about is probably going to be over for most people. Probably not everybody, but for most people. And the people who do get, massive deals or whatever for product are probably going to be, and I wouldn't say massive, not like breakers for 2018, 19, and 20, where like literally you get the cases and then you could literally like sell it on eBay for like 3x the market price or whatever. I don't see that happening again. But like,
Yeah, that can't happen. That's not healthy.
yeah. So, but then also when you break, there's technically a markup too, even on that. So they're really
I mean,
making
a
money. But
reasonable markup. Any business, and breaking is essentially a business. Any business is looking to get the products from some kind of wholesale seller, distributor, and have a markup, and a reasonable markup. I feel is completely fine, and a markup that if that's based on how much your product you're able to get distributed. I understand all of the like the business numbers behind everything, as long as it's like you said before, as long as the decisions are rooted in ethics, that there's you're not trying to squeeze out the last pennies from the collectors community, but you're trying to create something that's sustainable as a business model and that's good for everybody. So I feel like if you can approach that with that kind of mindset, I worry a little bit like if Fanatics is going to approach it that way, or if they're going to look for, I know that like Josh Loop was with the Backyard Breakers on their program for
mhm.
for for a while. And, I just worry that are they going to be looking for the breakers that they can really build long-term business relationships with, or would they be looking for the breakers that have a huge audience, that they can, automatically connect into that huge audience. So that's my worry,
It'll
if
probably
they're which one they're going to go, which path they're going to take.
I mean, they invest a lot of money, so they probably would do the huge audience. And I think even despite controversy, if they still have a huge audience, they're like, well, people don't seem to care. So we're just gonna probably leverage that. Um, because I was thinking, because Fanatics is so big and there are so much money. I would think they wouldn't even use like, and they probably still will, but like I don't know, if I was like overall this and I was at Fanatics, maybe I would be like the evil card person. But like, yeah, everything would be in house. Like, everything will be sold through distribution straight directly through Fanatics. Probably sold on the website, so you could pre-order stuff. And if it's not the website, you could wherever Fanatic stores are or warehouses, you can buy from them, and they can ship it. It'd be like a mini Amazon in a sense.
Yeah,
Um,
potentially, if they want to set it up that way. One thing I wonder, like I look at, so I'm in China, of course, as you know, and in China, there's one single distributor, Fansmall, that distributes all of the Tmall, like the Asia exclusive products. It's one distributor, and they're really more than anything, they're more like a breaking platform more than anything. If you go to the Fansmall app, in China, it's just lists and lists and lists of breaks. And that's the main thing they do, as the sole distributor. That's their main way of distributing, is through their own breaking ecosystem. And I kind of wonder if that might end up being what Fanatics does. I mean, they have talked a lot about wanting to support the local card shops, and I really hope that they hold to that, because I do feel like, the sports cards, the ecosystem requires community, and I feel like the local spirit, I mean, the local card shop is kind of the center of that. It's the beating heart of the community. And I feel like, I really do hope. They've said that in words a lot, but it's really hard to know, what their long-term plan is going to be. And it seems like they don't necessarily even know themselves in some ways. So I'm quite curious.
Here's something I don't understand. This is a little bit of a side, but I guess I don't understand. Like, if Fanatics has all this money, like, how come they don't just like grade the cards themselves,
So,
or buy a
I think
grading company?
they, I made a video a long back that was looking at it's really fascinating. The Michael Rubin, the main guy there with Fanatics, he's also he was one of the main investors in Blackstone Financial Group, which was the main financial group that backed up CCG and CSG. And so the head, Michael Rubin, this big guy in Fanatics, is like, has a huge stake in the success of CSG. That's I kind of feel like, if Fanatics can't get their own grading company, because there's real room for absolute corruption if the production company is also the grading company. There's too much room for that to be a corrupt situation. But if you invest heavily in a different grading company and you build a really close relationships with them, so that their success leads to your financial success, I feel like that's what's happening. I feel like CSG is going to be the Fanatics kind of partner in some of that. I don't know. I mean, again, I don't know what the long-term business is, but when I think about somebody like Michael Rubin investing so much in the CCG collectibles group, I can't see any reason why he would do that, unless he saw them as kind of like a future long-term partner kind of thing.
I was thinking about that as well. I'm not sure what happens to PSA then. Like, over time, does PSA kind of become second fiddle?
I think PSA is too big. I don't think any of this will affect PSA. PSA is too many wealthy people have too much money in PSA slabs that even if the other companies grow exponentially, like CSG might at some point in the future, it seems to me, I don't think it's going to affect PSA. Even if PSA does a terrible job business wise. They're too
Mhm.
deeply embedded, and too many people have too much invested in them. I feel like it's almost inevitable that they stay king of the hill, even if even with other things that might happen, because the market
Mm.
speaks also. As much as Michael Rubin might want CSG to be number one, the market has to make that decision ultimately, and they can push, and they can give CSG some real backing, and can get them climbing up. But I don't think that they can overpower the movement of the entire market, and the market has spoken on PSA so
Yeah.
clearly.
Yeah, I guess Hobby Champ said, I bet Fanatics will try to breaker exclusive release that can only be purchased by group breaker slots online in their ecosystem of sales and exclusive breaks. That's probably going to happen, actually. Yeah.
Sure, that's going to happen. That's Yeah, I'm sure that's going to happen. I don't know, what will be the how you'll get into that ecosystem exactly, but I'm sure that's going to happen.
Yeah, oh,
So David was just saying, similar here, that Fanatics keeps on paper a distant to the grading themselves. I think that's exactly why they would partner with a grading company rather than have their own grading company, exactly for that.
interesting. So basically, if I get like cars from Fanatics, I'm just going to send them to CSG. I wonder, would I get a higher grade?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that the goal would be to, if there's actually two separate companies that you want to encourage, that like you want to give financial backing so that company can succeed, but you're also trying to not create business corruption. I would imagine they don't want to create business corruption, I would hope. So so I don't think it would affect the actual like grade and everything. But if it's a trustworthy and reputable company, but at the same time, as much as they might try to do that, it's hard to know for sure how effective that will be, even with a lot of money. Because I love CSG, but at the same time, even as they're getting more and more of their cards are getting graded, it doesn't seem thus far to be affecting its market value on the secondhand market that much. But again, if they make the ecosystem really smooth and seamless, like David says here, you can send them there. It's going to be really easy. They'll probably have all kinds of ways to do it. Maybe over time, that does start to have an influence on the market more than it is right now.
Yeah, there's been talk about like some shadiness in grading though. And I guess it's more so with specific group submitters. They kind of get preferential grades over. I mean, there could be a little bit where you've graded so much, you looked at so many cards that you have a pretty good eye, and maybe some of these people have been graders before. So they kind of know what to send off and what not to send off. That could be, a valid explanation. But there's some, I know Beckett is one where there's certain people who their BGS 10 and black label rate is just insane. Where it's like most of the cars they send, it's almost most of the cars they send get a BGS 10 or black label.
It's interesting.
So it's one of those things where and I think this has been talked to, where there's been certain cars that have been altered, and this is another thing that people are talking about, doctoring certain cards, or like shining up cards, or smoothing out corners. And listen, technology is getting way better, so you might you might turn a 7 into a 9 now. And it's kind of like, and it may be hard to detect. So I've heard PSA has done things as far as, if it shows signs of tampering, they're just not going to grade it, or they're not sure, but it could be, but they really have no way of proving it has or hasn't been. They're not going to grade it. That has made some people mad who've pulled stuff straight out of a pack, off a first off the line release, and they're like, "No, I pulled this out of pack. This is not."
With all that you're saying there, I feel like the thing that I wish is that there was just more transparency behind the process. And because, like you said, it might be that, in the first thing you're saying about certain group submitters maybe getting higher grades, it's very possible that it's related to what you were saying. Like if you're a group submitter that is really taking a close look on what you're submitting, and you're only submitting in ones that you have a strong inkling that it's going to get like a high grade, and you're not sending in the other ones, and you really have a good eye, like that's going to increase your gem percentage for sure. But we can't know. There's so much that we can't know because it's behind a veil. We don't know the process. We know that there's potential for human error. We know that we don't even know, like when a group submitter sends their cards in there, is that group submission like go to a special place just for the group submitters, or do they get spread out among all the different graders in an equal way? Like we don't know how anything works in the grading companies, which I don't like. Like I feel like if they're so important to the industry, like the collector community who's using their services so regularly and spending so much money, like we should know more about what's going on and the processes and everything. And I feel that across all the grading companies, I feel like transparency is lacking, and I don't like that.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of things are kind of close too. It's kind of like I think and it may not be as many, but it's like so many more people are using grading companies now. There's so many more cars that are getting sent in for grading, where you're gonna probably have more kind of gray areas, where it's like, okay, is this a PSA 9 or is this a PSA 10? And there's probably some stuff that got, and also the graders are different. A lot of them have different experience levels. Maybe there's multiple people looking at a car, but if you're trying to get stuff through the door, especially for the newer products, like a lot of it's less now, but I mean, at one point, like people, if they just had cars, they just sent it in. They didn't really look at the condition or anything. They just sent in, and you got a ridiculous. That's why you had the backlog, and it probably gets to the point where it's like, yo, we only have like 30 seconds or a minute to look at this card.
Yeah, and it changes the relative sense of what a grade is going to be, because when people were sending in cards early on, and maybe they ended up as sometimes even a PSA 7 straight from a pack, PSA 8 straight from packs, these were common. But now people, not everybody, but a lot of people have a much better sense for if something has a good chance of getting a gem mint, or at the least like a PSA 9, or the equivalent of a PSA 9. So there's a lot more of those cards coming in, so it seems like it changes the relative grade of everything coming in, because you can't give everything a PSA 10. If people are better at choosing the cards to send in and more likely sending in PSA 10s, PSA can't just start giving more 10s, so they have to start giving more 9s just to keep it like the relative to the other cards that are coming in at that time, not relative to the cards that came in 2 years ago. The cards that came in 2 years ago were probably in some ways on a different scale, just because they're comparing them to what they're seeing. So I feel like it's weird.
Yeah, I've seen that. That another thing that's come to my mind is like 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan cards. I wonder how many cards because the PSA 9 in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, the population has grown a lot, and I wonder how many cards that if you sent it in same condition, stayed the same, that you sent in for PSA 9, you send it in, you get a PSA 9. Would if you would have sent it in 5-10 years ago with that same card in the exact same condition, you get a PSA 10.
Yeah, that's the question, and that's why I feel it's strange, because I feel like it's a crapshoot. Sometimes yes, but a lot of times no, and I feel like that's not the way grading is supposed to be.
And then also the upcharge thing. I don't like upcharges because
oh gosh, that's a pet peeve of mine. I'm actually making a script right now for a video of pet peeves responding to a video by Baseball Collector. You should check it out too.
Okay.
Because he has a challenge for video creators to make videos of pet peeves, and that was one that he mentioned, and that's one that's absolutely true to me. PSA's upcharge is ridiculous to me. It's just so it feels unethical, because I can understand a small upcharge if it reaches into a different level of insurance. If there's a certain insurance, for when you're storing it and when you're shipping it, you need to upcharge a little bit. That's okay. But the amount of upcharge is ridiculous, considering that card is not their card. Like, why are they making more money on a more valuable card when it's not actually changing anything that they're doing? They're doing the same service. It's like, it's really weird. It's like going to a restaurant and you order a burger for $10, but then the chef comes out and says, this burger got the best meat and the freshest lettuce, and this was fresh, this was best, this burger is going to cost you $30. I know it said $10, but this is a better burger. That's a $30 burger. It's crazy.
The other thing that made me think about this, because I got upcharged from a PSA return, and I was like, I wasn't sure that card costs that much anymore. Because, there's certain cards, even still today, there are cards that still swing in prices. And, they upcharge. And then by the time it gets to me a week or 2 weeks later, and I go directly to sell it, let's say I do an auction or whatever. Let's say I do an auction that has like, I don't know, Probe Team or PW, somewhere like that. And you got a lot of eyes, and it sells for much less. Like, they said it's valued at $6,000 or $10,000, and it sells for $200.
Yeah. And in a world where things like shill bidding are so common too, it's hard to know when with those upper end cards that are possibilities of being upcharged. Those are the kind of cards where shill bidding can affect the market value more than other realms of cards. So, if they're the ones making the choice on what is the value of it, like, there's, even if they make wise choices at times, like, I feel like the upcharge system it creates incentive for corruption. Even if they're not being corrupt, even if they're trying to be honest, like, they have incentive to be corrupt. As a great, that shouldn't be a business, can't be structured that way, to have incentive for corruption. It's crazy.
Yeah. I guess this is like the last topic I guess we didn't touch, but like the rise of kind of like the critical content versus the, I don't know, like the overhype kind of content. Just because, like, obviously we're talking about this stuff, and some of the stuff we're talking about is critical, but like a year ago, you had less people talking about it. I know AIH was talking about a lot of this stuff because I actually like watched his channel and stuff, but I did a video with him not too long ago about some of the stuff, but like definitely not 2 years ago. Like, everything was, and this is stuff that's kind of, most of the stuff has kind of always happened or happened before in the hobby. So it's not like it's some revolutionary problem or something. Do you think it's because like people are like losing money now, and it's like now people have gotten into more of reality in a sense? It's like, okay, this isn't like a get rich quick scheme, or this isn't, that mania that happened last year isn't the normal thing.
Yeah, no, that's really good points. I do feel like during the time of the super spike, like, it in some ways it makes sense that the kind of channels that people would follow are like, this is happening, this big exciting thing is happening, because everything was going up, and every decision that you could make as far as buying and then selling a week later or 2 weeks later was going to be making you money. It was just like almost inevitable, as long as you were an ongoing participant in the market in that space. You couldn't lose. So I think it created a mindset that people were and everybody that was getting drawn in that wasn't in that space before was in that kind of mania. And so it makes sense that those were the kind of channels that people were really focusing on in that time. And it makes sense now that people are starting to become a little bit more like calmed down and trying to understand the market forces a little bit more clearly now, so that they can make wise decisions if they're still in the sports card space, so they can make wise decisions, but with the right kind of, foundation on those decisions. So it makes sense that, that a more educational oriented kind of focus would have to make its way into that sphere. because the mania seekers, I think, the gamblers and stuff, kind of started to drift away a little bit more, and the people who are still in the hobby now are more, people who want to know about it and try to figure out how they can make good decisions in the current reality.
Yeah,
So I think it makes sense.
I think the pandemic had a lot to do with a lot of stuff too,
Yeah.
where you have so many other people. I mean, there are already a bunch of people flowing into the hobby, but then when the pandemic happened, you're just working less, and you just have a break from your everyday life, because like everyday life can get busy for a lot of people, especially like the largest percentage of people buying cars are Americans, and it's kind of like this. I don't know. America is still kind of this grinding culture in a sense, and a lot of people who have like the disposable income are probably working a lot and doing a lot of other stuff. Maybe they have kids, they got a spouse, and they doing other stuff, and a lot of times that takes up a lot of time. And I think a lot of people are probably starting to get back to their everyday life, and they're still in the hobby, but it's just like the money that they're putting in, they're probably putting into other stuff too. And
Yeah,
then
they have less time to put into it, and and the market is not so manic. So yeah, I think there's all those factors played into the crazy hype. So it makes sense, But I think it's nice that it's come through this gauntlet to a point where people are a little bit more like thoughtful, I feel, about it now. I mean, as you can see from the rise of, even some of the channels that were a little bit more like mania have shifted a little bit to trying to have a bit more like knowledge here and there. Not always. I mean, there's still shallow stuff out there, plenty of it. But I feel like people know what they're looking for. Hey, what's up, Brian, by the way? And Brian just made a really good comment here. People are more picky on what they're buying now. They're more picky on what they're choosing to watch. They're not just looking for the hype. They're looking for the knowledge more, and what they like, and what they want to search for it more so now. They're not just going out everywhere and like going a little crazy in every space. Like they're picking and choosing spaces a bit more.
Yeah. Also, I think a lot of the hype driven channels, they're probably promoting more expensive cards to buy. And if you're buying those expensive cards, one, like, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Gary Vee. You only got so much money. And now, like, Gary Vee's a little different, right? He can spend millions and millions of dollars on cards. Sports card investor can spend millions and millions of dollars on cards. Most people aren't trying to catch up with them. Like you're gonna run out of money trying to keep up with those people.
So you're probably gonna lose all your money if you try to keep up with those with that kind of pace.
So it's just one of those things where you can't, you just realize it's like, yo, I'm spending how much, and a lot of that money can go pretty quickly, and you're like, wait, how much I spent on cards? And if it's not, you're not getting that return, even if it's staying stagnant, like you're not really getting returns and stuff like that. It's like, maybe I should calm down. And then even with stuff going down, if someone ever had a situation where they spent $600 for a car and now it's worth $50, it's like, oh wait, I need to be careful, because like everything is not gonna stay around the price I buy it for. So I need to, or I can get in serious hurt or financial trouble or whatever. Hopefully there weren't too many people who got into serious financial trouble in cards for the last few years. Hopefully not.
I'm sure there were some. I mean, whoever was holding things at the top, I mean, that came down. A lot of cards came down so significantly. I'm sure a lot of people lost a lot of money in there. I mean, that's why I feel like, as a content creator, like for you and I, like in my mind, like part of our responsibility is to just, is to try to get at least some level of like, okay, just step back, like let's reflect for a little bit, let's see, let's analyze, let's try to figure out what are some certain concepts to step into when making decisions. Let's slow down, think through things. I feel like that's part of the goal, is because you don't want to it's so easy for somebody to get stuck on the top of the mountain on a spike and then lose a significant amount. It's one of the reasons I'm very scared of the high end. The high end, even if I was extremely wealthy, the high end freaks me out because the amount of people who are spending in that space is so small that you could have
Mhm.
a small exodus of just a handful of people, and the high end market is lost, because there's
Yeah.
just not enough demand. So then the prices are gonna crash, and it doesn't seem like a safe space to me at all. I like, just like Brian says here, the $100 to $500 per card on long term, like that's safer. Like a kind of card that if it did go down, the floor isn't necessarily crazy low, and it's not like putting you on the street. Like maybe if the cards go down, you have to buckle your belt a little bit, like eat a little bit more instant noodles for lunch a couple of times a week. Like, but it's not going to change your lifestyle in any significant way.
Yeah. And some of the major people, I mean, people talk about the sports card investor. He made a video where, he's made a lot of money from owning a lot of different businesses and things such as that. And, he could retire if he wanted to, right now. Um, so it's one of those things where, he said he has like 20%. I think that's the most I would, if I was gonna have like a huge part of my net worth in collectibles, 20% is the max. Like
Yeah,
20% is the max.
I
Like
don't think I could do that much.
that's really pushing. So
I like the idea of investing. Like there's this concept of, back at the time of the gold rush, that the people who invested in the gold mining processes and buying the gold mines, like some people struck it rich and became generational wealth. But most of the people who were really succeeding through that were the ones who set up the businesses to support the people who were taking the risks. The people selling
yeah.
the shovels and selling, opening the restaurants in the mining places. Like, in my mind, the more, that's even a healthier space, is just to figure out how to support people in what they're doing, and not necessarily like throw all your money into this risky space. Like, I like to invest in cards, like, and to look for opportunities, arbitrage opportunities, really, like, is what I would be looking for more. Like, not necessarily just seeing what's available that I can get for a decent price. If it's for myself, or if it's for selling, I want to find like the arbitrage possibilities, not necessarily the risky plays. The risky plays are not they're not they're not attractive to me.
Where how low do you think a lot of high end stuff is gonna go? Because we'll say like this is kind of starting to become more vintage now, but let's say the 1986 Fleer Jordan card PSA 10. I guess the highest that ever sold for PSA 10, just for the base card, because there are some autos that sold for $1 million, but like high grade autos, but
750K or something was the highest. Yeah.
yeah, like 850K for one, and then the other ones were like 720K, and there's quite a few that were like 600K. So I recently sold for 174,000, I think, which I'm not surprised. I
No, I'm
still
not.
think
I'm
that's
not
kind of
surprised.
high.
Because how many people are spending that much money? What's the demand? You have like a dozen people, well, probably more than that, but you don't have a whole lot of people who are going to
Yeah.
be willing to spork out hundreds of thousands of dollars on a card. So it's just, I don't know how low it's going to come, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me as a space to focus yourself.
Yeah. One reason I kind of made a little bit more critical content, just because I understand like geopolitics quite a bit. I guess Hobby Champs mentioned something, but and I just know like a recession is going to be coming in 2023. I just kind of just look at demographics and just some macro factors. And no, that doesn't mean like people aren't going to stop collecting, but I think people are going to be budgeting more, right? If you're spending, I don't know, $1,000 a year on cards, it may turn to 500 or 250 or whatever.
Yeah.
You start
Yeah.
going to lower end stuff.
That's
And
why
I,
that's why I feel that $100, $200, $300, like whatever the conditions of the global economy are, there's gonna be people who still want cards, and those cards are not crazy out of reach for a lot of people.
yeah. And then the other thing is Europe is gonna be in trouble. where it's not gonna be as wealthy, and things aren't gonna be as great. You're gonna have some energy crisis issues. Germany is kind of the heart of manufacturing. I'm not gonna go into detail about all this boring stuff, but it's like um, a lot of people in Europe aren't gonna have that disposable income, because people are talking about, oh, international market. For many places, the international market won't be big for a while. I'm not saying it will never be there, but it's just so many countries around the world are just having financial problems, and it's going to take a while to kind of get through that. And probably America is going to be one of the first countries to do that. And from certain experts that I listen to, they're thinking 2027, when inflation is really under control, and then we're able to manufacture and be really productive and really grow the economy the way it should be grown. So it's going to be a tough time, and that mania phase, not just for sports cars, but for everything. Crypto, I know people do
Yeah.
crypto, stocks, real estate. It's just not going to be that lucrative. And I think you're going to see a lot of people get frustrated and leave the hobby,
Yeah, I think it's
because
already
of that.
happened to a certain degree.
Yeah, it's already happening. And I think it's one of those things. A lot of people probably thought they're going to have more of a financial gain um, from this stuff, and uh, people are like, there are so many other prospects in my regular everyday life that I would just want to put more time to.
Yeah. I
Um,
think that that's a big point, because I feel a lot of the people who entered it were entering, there's all this big focus on side hustles, like so many different little things that people will do for side income aside from their job. And I think people were really approaching the hobby as a side hustle. But then when they realized that by on an hourly rate kind of thing, this is not a good side hustle. There's so many better ways, that if that's what you're really focusing on. So I feel like a lot of people kind of stepped away. And as you can see too, like Hobby Champs mentions here, that even a lot of the content creators have disappeared over the past little bit of time. And thank you, by the way. I hope you two stick around. We'll stick around. I'm sure we will. Because it's from a place of interest and not just hype, exactly that for that reason. But I feel like, I think that's also a repercussion of this. People kind of had a certain expectation, whether they were content creating in the space, whether they were just getting into cards themselves. There's certain expectations, and those expectations are not met. So a lot of people kind of step outside, or even if maybe they become more fringe involved, which is also
mhm,
not a problem. People could be involved in the hobby, but at the edges of the hobby, which is great. That's one of the things I love about the hobby, is you can come in and out. You can be more involved at certain times, less involved at certain times. You can, based on what you're doing. There's nothing that's, unless you have an actual business in the space, you can come
mhm,
and go as you please, and be as engaged as you want to be at different times. And there'll be times when you want to, like I've been on ComC recently. I've been having so much fun flipping cards that I'm finding for like 35 cents and selling it for 65 cents, just for
mhm,
fun, because it's just so fun. So
mhm.
like there's different ways to be involved at different times.
Yeah. The other thing, I think a lot of stuff is gonna kind of be consolidated more. All these spaces where people are selling cards. We kind of mentioned this about Fanatics. Um, like you have my slabs, because I've tried selling on other platforms outside of eBay, and most of the stuff I send to Probstein, because I'm in Connecticut, so it's like Probstein's in New Jersey, but it's like a 45-minute drive. I can literally like drive over and just drop everything off. And I've done business with them so much, and I don't like shield bid my stuff. If it sells low, it sells low. But like it's one of those things where it was just very convenient for me to like sell through them. And I've tried my slabs. I've tried I've tried all this. If you're trying to like do buy it now type stuff, there's just not as much traffic. Um, and even if you, because all gives you a range of what it should be worth. So I try to sell it for like 80% of what it's worth or whatever, because the fees were supposed to be 2.5%. They're raising the fees now. But yes, a lot of people still aren't trying to buy it. Like, people are very, very careful now. Before, if you put some 80% of like comps, it'd be gone like that. So it's like one of those things where the mindset has changed, which is good. I think less people are going to get hurt, but also a lot of these selling platforms, I like the ideas of less selling fees and things such as that. So it's like easier to transact. Um, but I don't see many of these, because you can also sell on PWCC. You can sell, I mean, the sports card shows. You have
Yeah.
Discords and Instagram. Like, you have so many ways of buying. You mentioned ComC. Um, there's like Pristine Auctions. There's so many other places you can buy and sell cards. Where and then when Fanatics are fully up and running, they probably have a website you buy and sell from them directly. um I don't know, and it just takes time trying to maneuver through all these websites.
Yeah, that's
um
true. And the thing that was just coming to mind as you were saying all of that, because you were talking about like how it would be nice if some of the, because like eBay, for example, their fees are quite high, really very high, and you would hope that with more competition, maybe they'd be able to, different people would be competing to bring those prices down. But honestly, I think the more competition in the market actually might make the seller's fees not come down at all, because there's not enough supply, and there's not enough people buying cards regularly. I look at like Star Stock, for example, and how their business model failed because they just weren't making enough ongoing money. They were trying to make money when the spike was going on, and there was like ongoing, like, so much buying and selling happening on the platform, and they got their little transaction percentage each time. Because there was so much movement, they could keep their fees pretty low, and it was okay. But as soon as the market slowed down, like, their business model couldn't work anymore, because it was based on like a constant movement. So now, I worry, like, if there's too many spaces to buy cards, like, it's hard if it's cards exclusive. It's hard. It could be hard for them to sustain a long-term business model if their seller fees get too low. So I worry that some of the different marketplaces, if they are only in cards, if they'll be able to maintain their My Slabs, could be one that I worry a little bit. Are they going to be able to maintain? Maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah. There's a bunch of other places that people buy. I use Whatnot, and there's other places people buying and selling cards. I haven't used Whatnot, but yeah, I've just tried like My Slabs and all. For some stuff, it may be kind of useful, but most of the stuff, it's like I might as well just send it to ProSteam or literally sell on eBay, because I'll probably end up selling it quicker. And in the ways, a lot of stuff, because I got everything back from PSA. Like, I literally got back like hundreds of cards, like almost 1,000 cards from PSA, like a month ago. I'm like,
Wow.
like dishing some of this stuff out, and it's like and certain stuff I'm gonna keep long term, just because I like it. And then a lot of stuff is like, I don't know why I was like sending this stuff in. uh but it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, you technically, for some of the stuff, you actually may make more money selling it on eBay with the higher fees than some of these
Mm.
other, because the volatility of the market. And then it could just sit there for less than comp for a long time, unless you're like trying to promote what you're selling, which could look weird, because it could look like you're pumping and dumping too.
Mm. That's true. Yeah. I mean, if it's just promoting your store, like if you're trying to just get people to check out what you have, that, I don't think that's pumping and dumping. And if you're just getting people, trying to get eyeballs over to your general store. But yeah, it's tough. It's with so many different markets, and so many few eyes. That's why I think, like we were talking about earlier, like being picky about what you're choosing. Like if you're looking for the kinds of cards that there's a number of people who you think are going to be looking for that card pretty regularly, you're probably pretty safe. Somebody will find it at some point. but so that's why I feel like there's a difference between like scarcity and obscurity. If you have a card that's obscure, that's kind of that nobody's looking, it could be the rarest card, it could be the coolest looking card, but if nobody's really looking for it, then it's there's no more demand than a common base card from from hoops or whatever. So I think you have to approach it with kind of looking at it from a lot of different angles.
Yeah, I actually like collecting the obscure cards just because it's like, and a lot of times it's a nice card, and it's like, oh, well, nobody's like going after it, so perfect.
Yeah. Did you see my video I put out a little while ago about the port I bought on ComC? That was like, it was only $60, but it was like, it included a whole bunch of like 1890s like cigarette cards, like actresses, like stage actresses from 1890,
Oh,
and like
really?
all this stuff. It was the coolest obscure set, like all this stuff I had never heard of. But I had so much fun learning about all of it. It was like 100 cards for $60. It was so cheap, but it was so much fun for me. I don't think I'm going to sell any of those, but it was because it was this obscure stuff that I had never heard of. It was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, I didn't see the video. I'm gonna check that video out. Yeah, yeah, it's one of those things. Yeah, I've kind of like gotten into. I'm interested in like some weird stuff. Um, there's one thing because I guess we're I think we're planning in at 2 hours, but like one of the things I want to talk about was like the whole shield bidding thing. I don't know if you think it's like the same, better, or worse now, just because obviously it's still going on. I don't know if I told you, it's probably happened later on. There's like a rare Yu-Gi-Oh card I bought. And it was literally from PWCC. I bought it. It was like a BGS 95. It was like $2,000 or something like that. And that's about the most I'm gonna pay for a sports card. And it's like something that I really wanted, and it's like super hard to find. Crazy enough, a PSA 10 came up, and I got the same card for like about the same price on another website. So I'm like, okay, BGS 95s kind of sell for like half or whatever. Maybe it was like 2,300 or something like that. So it sells for half. So yeah, 1,200 or something like that. One of the issue was like PWCC, they waited forever to sell the card because I like want to sell it. Like they waited like 3 months to sell it. Like I put in and it was like, and then it sold, and it sold for like $600. And I'm just like, what the freak? like, and also I don't buy, I actually rarely buy stuff now. I've rarely bought stuff since like beginning of January this year, but like, and I only play with money I'm gonna lose, but like I'm willing to lose. But it's just like, what? And the crazy thing is, I saw the same card in the BGS 95 sell for $4 or $5 or $6 or $7,000. So it's like,
That was
oh
when it was through PWC. That was on auction, right?
yeah, for auction.
Yeah, that's the thing about it's so volatile. The auctions for so many cards are going to be based on who happens to see them. What are the eyes on there? So it's hard to rely on auctions. Because you just never know. You just never know who's going to happen to be there. Or who's gonna notice it. That's true on on eBay, where there's an ocean of cards. So many can get lost in that ocean. On PWCC also, there's quite a big ocean of cards, and maybe less eyeballs there than there might be on eBay. So I feel it's hard to rely on auctions. I don't really like putting cards up for auction unless I feel like a little bit more certain, like it's the kind of card that a lot of people are going to be putting into the search bar. Like there's just too many cards can fall through the cracks. If you look at the previous sales on almost any card, it seems like there's always a couple of them that are like, what happened right there? Why did that card auction for so much less than the one that went the day before and the one that went the day after? Like there's so many that fall through the cracks.
See, yeah, there's two things. That one you actually said something that was really, really, really good. But the first thing was technically PWCC. The reason why they waited to sell the card was because they wanted to they have an algorithm, and they want to slip it into the right spot where it can get the most views and get the most bids and sell for the highest amount. And it helps them because like the person's going to be paying PWCC fees and stuff for higher amount of cards. And they're supposed to kind of like promote the card too. I think they have like a email list they send out and they promote the card. They did all that, and it still sold for a lot worse. So it's just like, and then dang, I just forgot like what you said. Oh yeah. So basically, when it comes to all this, even with shield bidding, there's still gonna be cards that fall through the cracks. And I think that's like we mentioned a 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan PSA 10 card sold for $174,000. That's probably a card that fell through the cracks. Maybe it's worth that much, and nobody's really willing to go over that. But a lot of shield bidders, especially if you have like a large inventory, that's a lot of cards to keep up with. And there's new stuff coming out, and if you're looking at the new stuff too, you're going to struggle, and you're going to have some it's just going to be a struggle, and you're going to continue to see things fall through the cracks and things get lower and lower and lower.
Yeah. And like we were saying before, there's so many places that people can buy cards that, you know, that people aren't necessarily, even if they're getting, you know, if they're on the email list for pristine auctions or PWCC, maybe they also had a card show they're going to next weekend and they're saving up money for that card show. Or maybe there's, you know, some other card that there's so many different possible spaces that people could be spending their finite amount of money, that it's just hard to know what could happen with any individual single card. It's one of the reasons I like, you know, I prefer putting cards onto like a buy it now situation, like on ComC, for example, or, you know, when I move back to the US, I'll be using eBay a lot more as well. And, you know, and just letting it sit there, you know, maybe if there's a card that I see, okay, this has been sitting there for a long time. There's not been a lot of interest. Maybe, you know, I want to offload this inventory. Maybe I'll put it up for auction and see what happens. You know, as you know, I kind of expect at this point auctions to do worse than I would have expected them to. It's my expectation.
That's true. Yeah. That's probably why there's like still so much shield bidding though. Cause like people are trying to sell. They're like, oh, well, I don't want this to sell for low. So I'm going to like try to shield bid this up and make it seem valuable and kind of get people caught up in buying it. But then they go sell it to next. I just seen this a lot. I've seen this a lot with UFC cards. Just certain cards like literally sold for $200, and there's another in the auction, and then the next day it sells for $100, and it's like, and it's by the same seller, and it's like the same.
It happens all the time. I was amazed at how frequently it happened when I was making a video a while back that was, you know, like the highest card sold from each team, like, and so I was looking through like, you know, each of these cards, and it kept being that exact situation kept happening again and again. I was amazed at how often it was where the exact same card would sell a week later for you know, a bit less than the previous. It just kept happening. It's like, oh my gosh, like, you know, I'm sure some of these are not shill bids, but a very strong portion of these are shill bids. You know, it's one of the reasons I feel like it's hard to trust. You can't trust the data completely. Like the data is the data. It's you know, and you know, the data, you know, if you get data from different sources, there's ways to try to filter out some of that. You know, some of the data tools try to filter out some of that as well. And even sites like 130point.com, they try to filter out some of the most likely shield stuff, but it's really hard to do that. And so it becomes hard to rely on the data. You have to really be able to rely on your understanding of the market forces, the understanding of supply and demand, your understanding of what is the hype, what's speaking, you know, what's actually the things that people are interested in. You have to kind of understand the narratives outside of the data, you know, more so because the data is so suspect sometimes.
Yeah, I know from personal experience. Early in the year, I bought like a Jim Brown PSA 7 rookie card.
Nice.
And it was like it fell in price dramatically. So I got like a pretty good deal. And then there was a second one that came up, and I bought that one, and they were around the same time of each other. Because I sold a bunch of stuff and I had like a bunch of extra money. So I was like, okay, I can get, you know, I try to get quality over quantity. So like And I was like, cool, I got 2 really good Jim Brown cards. And the second one they didn't send. I guess they said they sent it, and it showed up as like a also the bad thing was it's so like much cheaper, because I remember Neo did a video and he was talking about the Jim Brown cards, and that was one that you talked about that sold for much less.
Hmm.
Um,
That was yours.
and yeah,
No.
so it was like one of those things where it was like a scam. The person, I obviously got my money back and stuff. And
They just didn't like the selling price, huh? So like, nope, I'm not gonna send that. I'll get the
yeah, and then they just like deleted their account and started a new account and tried
that's
to
that's
sell it
unfortunate.
again.
That's one of the things, with so much of sports cards is online, and it's not face-to-face interaction. I feel like, people can it's easier for people to default to unethical behavior when you don't have a person-to-person interaction with somebody.
True.
Like if you're actually talking with somebody and making a person-to-person interaction, like the better parts of yourself are more likely to display it. Oftentimes, people hide behind the screen and the worst of themselves come out. So I feel like, that's one of the negatives about so much of the hobby being online. There's a lot of positives. I mean, I love being able to have access to being able to find anything, on eBay, that anything, absolutely anything is there. So it's nice, but it's also, it lacks the person-to-person kind of aspects of things.
Yeah, I think it's probably better to buy and negotiate with someone, because you can get stuff like, generally under comps, and then there's not like the selling fees and stuff like that. If you're trying to sell to someone, because I went to a couple sports card shows like in the local area. One of the guys, because we were trying to, I had like a vintage card or whatever, and we were trying to figure out, it was just rare, and just trying to figure out like the actual price, and we are doing the calculations or whatever. And then we were trying to see what it was actually worth, and then he was giving me obviously a lot of these people are trying to, especially a lot of dealers, right? They're trying to like buy and sell, and make profits, right? So um he wanted it for 2,500, and we were kind of determined the price to be 3,300. And I was like, yeah, the lowest I go is like 3,000. Well, technically, you can argue that the price should have been 4,000, but I was like, yeah, I'll give it for 3,000. But he wanted it for 2,500, so we didn't do the deal, and I just sold it on Probstein, and got it for around 3,000. And that was around the time where, I don't know, cards selling for over $1,000 was only 5% or whatever. So it was like one of those things where I just made more money selling online. But it was just like one of those things where if you're going to shows, I think it may be smart to go to shows consistently and buy and sell, because like the price points are a little bit different. You don't have the fees and stuff, but the price points are kind of
Yeah.
different.
And you start to build, I think over time you start to build the relationships too. Like, so,
True.
if a certain seller knows you're going to buy from them regularly, like you'll probably be able to get some good deals from them on time. And if somebody, you're coming to sell regularly, and people know that they can get, the inventory or the cards that they really like, that you'll have them, and they know there's going to be a certain level of consistency, then they might also be, more willing to see, what's possible. So I feel like there is some advantages to consistency, in person kind of shows. Even with things like eBay, if your eBay store, people know that they can go there and find the kind of cards they're going to be looking for, and they're consistent on that, then I think they look at you first, because the most important thing is to just get eyeballs on things, if you're looking to sell cards. So if people know they can trust you, if they know you're going to have some good stuff to look at, they're more likely to come back again and again.
Yeah. They know you are going to probably try to sell them like trim cards or fake cards or stuff like that too. Yeah.
This one, I love this idea here. Hobby Champs talks about like every vault should have a trading feature that people can trade safely and have another reason to vault. I love that idea so much. I've thought about
Wow.
that exact idea quite a number of times. Like when I'm on ComC, because I love ComC, I'm always on ComC. I'm just like, how cool would it be if I could like this card? I could trade these 5 cards for those 3. Just like I've always thought of that idea, but it's hard to think of how the business model for that one, how the vault would end up making profit from it. But
Yeah,
that's the idea.
unless it's like a company with just like a ridiculous, like it has to be like an Amazon where it's making money from so many other areas where it's like, oh, we can still grow our business if we just go in a hole in this particular area or whatever. Um, I don't know if there's Fanatics is the closest thing I can think of that probably has the money to do this, or obviously BlackRock owns the CGC and CSG, so depends on how much money BlackRock, if they wanted to actually inject a certain amount of capital into it, which it probably won't. But yeah, that would be cool.
I did hear. I was listening to a podcast the other day. That was kind of cool. There's some kind of company that's developing that has like a couple of different hot. They're located in a few places across the U.S. and they're basically like the middleman for trading for people who want to trade cards. So the people who want to trade cards will send them there. They make sure everything's legit, and then they send them off to the different people just to make sure there's a certain level of trust. So I don't know if from my understanding of the podcast, I thought their idea was a little bit like that. To eventually create a system, a bit of an ecosystem for trading cards, which would be really cool, because that's really, in many ways, that's the root of the hobby. Is they're called trading cards. The origins of it was a lot about that. People would try to put together complete sets, and so they just trade with other people and then get their complete sets together. So it would be nice to have that more.
Yeah.
There's some cool comments in here. We've skipped over. If we've skipped over your comments, by the way, guys, I'm sorry. We get into the conversation and then it's hard to jump it to everybody's comments. But I've been reading them and there's a lot of good stuff over there.
I mean,
Let me just pop up a few. Hobby Champs was talking about the PWCC and about how he wants to try them, but he's kind of a little reluctant because their hobby is kind of murky. Do you know much about that whole thing? I mean, I guess we don't have a whole lot of time. We've gone well past 2 hours, and it's almost midnight for me over here. But I am curious because PWCC, I know there was so much that happened. I have no concept of the reality of the situation. It seemed like a lot of he said, she said kind of stuff, and I don't know much. Do you know much about like what actually went on with all that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's harder now because I think before you could bid on your own cars for PWCC auctions, but I think now you can't. Because I remember I sold a card and I just like checked to see, and you couldn't. So you can't directly bid on with your account. However, you can make a second account. It's kind of hard if you have to use a second phone number, and you have to verify that phone number. But their apps, they did get caught shield bidding and trimming, or just selling trim cards.
So my question with that, like, though, is were they shill bidding, or was somebody who was selling their cards was shill bidding? That was kind of like
Probably someone
consigning
selling
through them, and they weren't at fault, or were they at fault? Were they actually doing it? And the trim cards, did they know what they were doing, or was this I'm curious, at the ethics side. Like, I realized, like, from a business standpoint, you need to have stronger forces in there to make sure that things don't fall through the cracks. But was it nefarious, or was it accidental? I'm very curious because my own approach, or my own thoughts about whether or not I would want to use PWCC in the future is based on that a lot. So I've been trying to think a little bit more, because it just seemed like when it happened, it was like, eBay said this, but there was also, I was reading a lot of stuff about how, like, PWCC was becoming kind of a competitor of eBay. So there was also like business reason for eBay not to want PWCC to be there. So, was it kind of like blown up a little bit out of proportion, or was it really a genuinely massive problem? And I've never really been able to get to the full story of what actually, if it was truly nefarious, if it was, they just need to have better protections in place.
Yeah. So
Collector's Dream is.
So when it was on
I wish we could
eBay,
add him on here.
Yeah, I agree with Collector's Dream. A Collector's Dream. It was both sellers and employees that were shield bidding. Also, it became murky because they were on eBay. So obviously, you can just shield bid on eBay. You can make another eBay account. There is like limitations for PWCC. And later on, they kind of started to crack down. So if you didn't pay for an item, they just permanently banned you. Or banned your account, so you have to like do another account. So you could probably shield bid through eBay. You could shield bid through PWCC account, which they kind of control for, but you can get around that. Like there's ways you can make another PWCC account and then bid up a card or something, and you don't see who the bidders are on PWCC. So those are factors, and then I think there are certain people who are receiving emails to like from PWCC to kind of like bid on their cards and stuff like that. And then the trimming thing, yeah, there's certain cards that they probably knew were trimmed, but they tried to sell anyway and just pass it off, or that were fake or just questionable. There's questionable authenticity, but they're like, oh, we're gonna go through with it anyway.
So that's interesting. I'm going to have to, Collector's Dream said the complete stories on blowout cards. I'm going to have to find that, because I do feel like, when we were talking about some of the different things, some of the different like lack of transparency with certain grading companies, or lack of kind of ethical behavior with this example, like, I feel like these are the kind of things, like we were talking before about the difference between critical content and mania content. And I feel like the space where the critical content is also really important is so that we collectively have an understanding of what's, the business practices and the kind of things that we want to actually be supporting, because there's, the thing about sports cards I find is it's actually a very small community generally, and it's the possibilities for things to go in a good direction are there if we make the choices for them to go that way. Like if the systems are set up, like it seems like PWCC is an example of like they had created a system that incentivized themselves to be corrupt, which is not how it's not how it should structure. PSA's upcharging, we were talking before too, is like a system that's structured, specifically built in a way that incentivizes corruption. I feel like that's not the way that businesses should be structuring themselves in this space. We need a space that's much more transparent, that's much more that's much more honest. That's of course businesses need to make money, but there's so many possibilities to make money in this space, but in ethical ways. That's why that's one of the reasons I support ComC a lot, is because my impression, I don't know everything about them, but I really like the approach they have. I like the concepts behind what they tried to do from the business get-go. The ways that they seem to approach business seem very legit. Like I respect them. It's easy to respect them, so I like that. Like, or like, recently I've been using Card Hedge, and one of the big reasons I leaned towards Card Hedge is because I found that it was just so easy to respect the people doing it, to see what they're doing, to understand why they're doing it, to respect who they are as humans, and to feel like I want to support that, because it's somebody, it's easy. I want to support people and businesses that I feel are making contributions in the space that are positive and that are good, So
yeah, I use ComC quite a bit. Dang, there was actually one more thing that kind of came to my mind. Because you mentioned you have like card letter market movers or big things that people talk about, and they report sales history of cards. That can kind of skew things, right? Because if people find out, people are willing to pay 3x for this card now. The ethical thing that kind of comes to mind is the private sales, and it's like this private sale was an all-time high, and it's like I'm sure there are ways to confirm that someone paid for it and stuff like that, but my thought process on a private sale is everything about it is private. And because here's the thing, I don't know if they're gonna say, oh, we have this private sale of I don't know 1986 Fleer Jordan PSA 10 for 100K, all time low or low in the last 2 years or something. Are they gonna do that, or are they only gonna do it when it's an all time high?
Yeah. Well, that's why I think, like the data tracking platforms themselves shouldn't have any. I mean, there should be no incentive for them to do it in a dishonest way. I mean, if it's sold for an all-time high or an all-time low, it shouldn't make a difference to the data tracking platforms themselves, I would think. So, but that's why it's so important to that there's ethics. I keep saying the word ethics. Is I'm doing a class right now. I'm on my last class of my master's degree program, and it's on ethical leadership. The whole class is on ethical leadership. So I've been reading all these documents and everything about this within the realm of education, like for educational leadership. And but it's true in every space. I find if there's a data tracking tool that I believe in the ethics of the people doing it, then I think I believe that they're going to do the best efforts to try to confirm things. That maybe there's still room for human error. In a private sale, I know from Card Hedge, for example, JD was saying that in one of his videos, he was talking about how if there's a private sale, the way that its data will get entered into the system is if there's proof that that sale went down. If there's some online provable thing where they can look at this, they can see, okay, this really happened, we'll add it in. And if they can't prove it, then they don't put the data in there. So they do their best at least to try to make sure it's legit stuff. There's always room for human error in any of these spaces, though, which is one of the reasons why data can be unreliable.
True. Yeah. Well, we talked about a lot.
Yeah. We're at 2 hours and 15 minutes. Yeah, we have a lot of other things here. I wish we could have commented on some of these last comments here. I'm gonna have to go and see this Rattle Pokemon's interaction with Eric Meyer of PWCC. I haven't seen that. I'll have to look that up. I really didn't look up much about PWCC previously. I'd never used them, but just more recently, I've been wanting to learn a little bit more about them because I was curious. So now I have a lot of directions to look at. I'm gonna have to do
I will mention this. Certain PWCC cards. There are some major players in the hobby that do use PWCC. So there are some like mid-tier to high mid-tier cards that kind of sell, that's like hard to find and may not show up on eBay as much. So that's where I try to buy, but I try not to keep it in the vault anymore. A lot of times I just pay $5 for shipping or something like that, and then ship it to my Ship My Cards vault. But I don't want to keep it in there for too long too, because I don't know what companies are going to go over or go under, just because everybody has a vault, right? Everybody's trying to get you not to pay sales tax and save money, which is great. But I am concerned that not all these vaults are going to last. And some of these companies, and PWCC could be one of them, where what happens to your cards, right? Like, you want to feel and hold your cards, but still, like, you keep them in the vault. I probably prefer a safety deposit box for more expensive stuff at a bank, but it's one of those things where they go under or they go bankrupt or something. Are they going to send your cards to you, or are they just going to keep them and sell them down the line?
I think legally, if they did that, I mean, that would be straight up jail time. I mean, because officially those cards are not, they don't own those cards.
True.
So I think, if something like that happened, I think it would be It'd be crazy for them. I mean, I think, I mean, what I could see, the only thing comparison I could make is with Star Stock. In Star Stock, basically, they had to, their number of staff went so far down. I put an order in to get some of my cards back, back in May, I think. I still don't have them yet, because it's just, I know that they'll come eventually. I just know it's going to take forever because the lack of human resources. So, that's what I would imagine would happen if any of those other places went out of business. It'd probably just be like, you have to wait a year before you get your cards.
Oh man, yeah, that's insane.
Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. All right, man. There's some this comment here I wanted to pull up here. Do you think eBay will try to expand their vault for cheaper cards to get more of the cake?
Maybe. I feel like eBay can do whatever they want to do, because they
Yeah.
sell so much stuff, right? Like that, the sports cars are still a small portion of their business. So if I've seen, they've done a lot to expand their sports card division or whatever. When I talked to customer service, like with the Jim Brown card that somebody tried to scam me with, it was just one of those things where, the person I was talking to knew what the Jim Brown card was, or knew what the kind of card was. And just over time, because I sold on eBay for, even still today, for last 3 years. So the knowledge base of like the people, even customer service I've talked to, know more about this stuff. But they could if they want to, and it could be a thing. But they don't necessarily have to, because I don't think anyone's going to replace eBay as far as buying cards.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
still have a bunch of consigners like Probstein and other consigners, even though they lost PWCC. And PWCC is just collectibles in general, video games, cards, maybe some coins, and maybe some comic books.
Yeah. Yeah, it also seems to me like, they could, like you said, if eBay wanted to go into expanding their vault for cheaper cards to get more of the cake, they absolutely could if they wanted to. My question would be whether it'd be worth it for them, like, because they have, like you say, they have so many different spaces in their business, and the lower end cards are probably the ones that would make the least amount of like money for them, because it's, a $3 card, they're going to get themselves what, 45 cents or something like that, but a $300 card, they're going to get themselves $45, something like that. So they probably have more incentive to go for the bigger cards, and because the more cards you have in a vault, the more human resources you need, the more space you need, the more you need to spend on air conditioning and all the and security and all these other kinds of things. So they have the money to do that, but it seems like the incentive to really try to get the lower end cards is not there so strongly. But anyway, cool topics. I'm thinking, I'm starting to fade. I'm getting really tired.
Yeah.
Midnight. Almost midnight for me now. We've been on here for 2 hours and 22 minutes. This is awesome, though. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, those was very fun.
Always enjoy it, Chris. We'll have to do this. We'll have to do this again at some point.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll probably many more in the future. But yeah, I pretty much gotta like head out because I got a lot of stuff to do for the day. But
yeah, your day's just beginning. It's noon for you, yeah?
Yeah, getting close to noon now.
All right, very good. Well, this was awesome. So, and thank you everybody who's been in the comments there. This was my only my second live stream, and it's so much fun having people in the comments, sharing some different thoughts, and then like we can bounce ideas off people down there. It's so much fun. I might have to do these lives. I did a live a week ago for the first time with Peter Pacman. I think you saw that one as well.
Mm-hmm.
You were jealous. You said you wanted to have him as well. You should. By the way, he's awesome. But I've learned I actually really like these lives. It's so nice to be able to just kind of sit back and chat and talk about the hobby, and this is the first time that there's been people in the comment box. So that added a whole new element to it. That was really fun.
Yeah. Also, quick question. So you use StreamYard and then just connect it with YouTube?
Yeah. So you should be able to do that as well. It's any like if you want to try to do this on your channel, you go into the live stream thing, and the first time you say you want to do a live stream, they have to give you like there's a 24-hour sort of thing you have to check out, make sure
Mhm.
that that you're legit or whatever. But you don't have to have 1,000 subscribers yet. You can do it anytime, and then
Okay.
you just sign up for this is called StreamYard. um, you'll get like a 7-day trial, and that in the 7 days you can do some additional features. But once the trial ends, I've just learned from this stream that you can still do it just for a general live stream like this, for the free version.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, it's been great talking to you, Javed.
Absolutely. You as well, Chris. One of the best lives. Great job. It's awesome. Thanks, Hobby Champs. That's really encouraging to hear. Appreciate you guys. All right, all. Have a good day, I guess. Peace. Mahalo. Is it ending? I thought it would already end by now. Do I just have to stay in this position? It's not ending.